Welcome to Motorcycle News and another long-term test review with one of the bikes that we ran throughout in 2024. I'm joined today by Saffron Wilson, MCN's reporter, and you probably have, in some ways, one of the dream jobs because you get to cover all manner of things which will sort of feed into your test of this bike in just, well, I say this bike and our nineT because this isn't actually your bike. It's already gone back, so we've got this one as a bit of set dressing. But you had quite a busy, productive year with your test bike and you covered just over 10,000 miles in the end, that's right?
Yep, 10,052 because I went a bit too far and I really wanted to go home that day, but yeah.
And in the course of your job and also just kind of leisure rides, you did a little bit of everything, I think. So leisure rides, commuting, mid-distance stuff, and some quite long-distance stuff. So perhaps start with that, actually, because that was quite a trip for an unfaired retro. Where did you go with it?
So I went down to the BMW Motorrad days in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. I can't say it.
Sorry
Garmisch.
if you're German offended by that, yeah, Garmisch.
We'll call it Garmisch. Yeah, so they do Motorrad days there every year. Basically, BMWs from all over the continent kind of go there and just do lots of BMW stuff, see what's new, retro stuff, custom stuff, all that sort of stuff. But on the way there, I decided to go via the Alps. So I kind of went down into Switzerland and then did as many Alpine passes as I could until I got into Austria and then buzzed it up into the bottom of Germany.
Okay, so a nice mix of scenic roads and auto routes and all sorts. How was that on a long run like that? Because, I mean, this wouldn't be my first choice for doing something like that, but it sounds like it didn't go too badly.
Well, it weren't too bad. Don't get me wrong, I did the toll roads in France. That was pretty horrific, especially when it was raining, because it rained a lot that trip. So, yeah, constantly sitting, well, it was about 80 miles per hour, isn't it, the top speed there. It was horrible, hour after hour, 8 hours on the toll roads, that was pretty bad. But as soon as you got into the Alpine passes and up the twisties and stuff, then this kind of like went into its own and it was brilliant, yeah. Sure.
So, I mean, unlike our test example here, your bike didn't have a screen, did it? So you were just...
Absolutely no fairing whatsoever.
Yeah, so you've got neck muscle like Jeff Capes now, I should imagine. And then in terms, obviously, that side of the comfort wasn't great. How was things like the seat and the rest of the riding position? Was that okay?
Yeah, to be fair, the seat was a lot comfier than I thought it would be. And I know for a retro I was going to be a little bit further forward. But for me, because I'm quite tall for a woman, I'm 5'8.5", so I managed to sit up quite nicely on it. But again, when you're doing long distances at high speed, you try and crouch in a little bit, which takes the pressure off your wrists and stuff like that. So yeah, overall, not too bad. It took me a bit of getting used to because you couldn't like stretch out your legs because obviously the engine's in the way. Yeah. So it was, you know, trying to wiggle around on the seat as much as you can to stretch your legs out. But overall, in terms of comfort, for a retro bike, I thought it was pretty good.
Okay. It's worth probably mentioning that you did hope to get a screen, but they weren't available at the time, were they?
No, they weren't, unfortunately. It was only after the bike went back I found a load of aftermarket ones I could have tried, so that's a bit annoying. But yeah.
That's the way it goes sometimes. And that trip was, we were talking about this just a moment ago before we started filming, it was kind of marred a little bit by an indiscretion from the bike. Yeah,
so I just got to Folkestone, to the tunnel, and I'd kind of, well, the last 10 miles, I think, a warning light came up. And it was a warning light for a headlamp fault. I thought, well, it's kind of 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't need my headlamp at the moment, so, you know, not too worried about it. So I carried on to the tunnel. Got to the tunnel, the headlamp fault was still on, turned the bike off. Thought, you know what, we'll deal with that on the other side. I'll go find a dealer or something like that. Turned it back on, it was still on when I got onto the train. When I turned it off on the train, the headlamp was still on. And it weren't turning off, if that makes sense. It was still like the high beam was still on and it just wasn't turning off. And obviously the whole bike was off because I was on the train. But after about 15 minutes, it turned itself off. And I thought, okay, that's either good news or bad news, not sure what. And then on the other side, the fault had gone. When I turned it back on, the fault had gone. Okay. In that time, I'd found the closest BMW dealership, which was, I can't remember where, Reims, I think it was. So I went straight to Reims to get it plugged in, just in case. Plugged it in, the chap was lovely. He couldn't speak much English, but he tried his best and, you know, frankly, that's pretty good. It's better than my French. Plugged it in, he said, no, you're fine, you can carry on. Great stuff. So I left Reims, and my next stop was Dijon, so I was going right down the bottom of France. And I had no faults at that point, but throughout the entire trip, every so often, random faults kept coming up. So on the toll road, I had a tyre pressure warning, which said I had very, very low tyre pressure, and I was like, okay, here's a breakdown coming. And I was expecting to feel all the wiggles of the bike and all sorts of stuff, but it was fine. I slowed down, pulled over in the hard shoulder, tyre pressures were fine, turned the bike off, turned it back on again. It was fine. The indicator light just went. So I was like, right, okay, we'll carry on. I think I had a cruise control fault. Again, the cruise control was working, so it was very strange.
But the dash was telling you there was a problem?
Yeah, but the dash was telling me there was a problem until I turned it off. I think the worst one was when I was just got back into the UK. I was about 40 miles from home, and it had been raining all day. I'd been on the road for about 9 hours at this point. So I was nearly home, and I turned the bike off at service, and the ABS light was still on. I thought, well, a bit strange. I could still hear the bike whirring. It hadn't quite turned itself off properly. So I went inside, got something to eat, warmed up a little bit, left it for about 20 minutes, came back out. The ABS light was still on, so I tried to start the bike, and there was nothing. You could hear a click where it was kind of like trying to engage, but it just wasn't doing anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So after a bit of Googling, I cycled the kill switch, and the bike started, but I had no dash, I had no indicators, I had no headlamp, and this was on the side of the A14, and it was raining hard. And it was getting late.
What time of day?
It was dusk. It was just coming up to dusk. So I had daylight, but it was going to go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
As a result, I remembered my theory test and had to do hand signals the entire way home, which is a bit scary when you're coming off the A14, as you can imagine, in the rain.
Yep.
I got home. That's the main thing. I got home, parked it up for the night. Again, the ABS light was still on when I parked it up. And I thought, you know what, I'm not dealing with this anymore.
I'm home.
I'm done. So I left it, locked it up, came back in the morning. The ABS light was gone. I was like, great. Tried to turn the bike on, battery had died.
Oh,
so
it eaten itself.
Yeah, technically it was a breakdown now. So yeah.
Right. So where do you go from there? I think you mentioned you use the BMW Assistance Service. Now, what's that called?
Yeah. So I gave them a call.
Yep.
And I said, I'm broken down. And they were actually, I can't fault them. They were like, where are you? Is it like immediate? And all this sort of stuff. I told them, you know what, it's fine, it's at home, I'm not in a rush, can you just get someone to come out when you can? So they sent somebody out. What I didn't realise is the BMW guys, they work on both cars and bikes. So they have a kind of broad knowledge of everything. So he came out, testing the battery, he just said, yeah, the battery's dead. I was like, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But he got me in touch with the nearest BMW dealership, gave me a lift over there, and he said, you know what, these guys will sort you out, because they do motorbikes and stuff. I was like, yeah, fab. Gave me a lift over there, I rode over there, he gave me a lift back. And I left it with the BMW guys for a few days, but they couldn't find any faults, unfortunately. They couldn't replicate the fault that happened, which was strange. So after a little while longer, riding around in the UK, I did discover that it usually happened when you'd open the throttle a bit.
So you're giving it a big handful and...
So yeah, when you're overtaken or something, a random fault light would come up. And we took it down the airstrip when we were doing a big long-term test, didn't we?
Yes, we had a lovely day on an airstrip near us, having a bit of fun with our bikes. It's our privilege.
Yeah, so as we were all swapping, every single time it went down, a fault light came on. So I'm thinking that's probably something shaking or something like that, I don't know. But we never did get to the end of it, unfortunately, but it worked in the meantime, so I can't complain too much.
I soldiered through. So we've gone kind of quite heavy and early on the faults you've had, but what about the good side? What did you enjoy? What were the bits that kind of made it, I guess it must have been a pleasure to kind of live with to some degree, because you did 10,000 miles in the end.
Yeah, honestly, the faults are the only fault. I absolutely loved everything else about this bike, so it was just one of those, and I've seen reviews and people have not had an issue with them, so whether I just got a dodgy one, I don't know. But like I said, I managed to go to and from Germany without really breaking a sweat, which is a big ask for a retro bike.
Sure.
I'd been in all weathers on it, and it didn't really let me down. Like, in the rain, it was fine. It was absolutely fine. I did swap out the tyres for some Batlax S23s, which I felt were better when you're doing all like the B roads and the twisty stuff.
Do you remember what standard fitment? Because this one's on Continentals.
Yeah, I think they're the
same
standard,
again.
but I'm not sure, so check that.
Maybe we'll drop it in the comments below, or in the description below. And this is probably a little bit different to kind of the bikes, because you've got Harleys in your own sort of garage, and you had one as a long-termer before. How did you find this style of bike compared to what you traditionally go for on your own time?
So I think the most interesting thing for me was, because this has got the slightly older engine, you've still got the little tick-tock of the engine.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting in traffic, you can feel it kind of like moving.
Yeah.
And it's got that little bit more character than you would with like the really, really modern bikes, which are all just quite straight-laced, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I think this is, well, we've kind of done it on road tests before, when you've got people who are actually doing the proper road tests saying it's a lot to handle, but because it's characterful and you kind of, it can handle, but equally you have to ride it. Does that make sense?
You have to put a bit of work in,
Yeah. So you're not bored. You're not kind of like thinking, oh, it's just a Sunday ride or something. Sure. When you get on it, you know you're going to go for a ride rather than a poodle, even though I love poodling. So I think that, for me, was the biggest kind of like plus point. It's a retro bike and it's still got an attitude, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, I mean, a certain amount of retro appeal, but it is quite modern because it's got lean-sensitive rider aids and things like that, and a TFT dash as well, which is different to the previous model, which had kind of normal-ish dials. How did you get on with that?
So the TFT dash, that's an optional extra. So it does come with the retro clocks, but the one I had the TFT dash. So what I was trying to figure out with this for a long time, without reading the manual, because I just wanted to figure it out, was how this little wiggly thing worked.
Yeah.
And it turns out you have to get the BMW app, and then it connects to your phone, and then it actually does everything on the app. That's how you control it. So this doesn't do anything with the dash itself.
Okay.
So which was interesting, because you can get like your own kind of profile on the app, and it can tell you about your trips, and it can show you your lean angle, and it can show you like your routes and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. I did try and set up a route a couple of times while I was in Europe, and it did kind of like spin me around 3 times till I finally went back to Google Maps or whatever. But yeah, it was quite an interesting thing, because doing that on your phone while it's on the move was just a bit strange, but it was, it kind of worked.
So this is a slightly different, well, it's quite a different display to the big GSs and things where things are a little bit more integrated. So minor issues with the app aside, how did you sort of get on with it in sort of day-to-day use?
The app?
No, sorry, the sort of general function of the dash. So I think you mentioned fuel gauge as an issue.
Oh yeah, so it hasn't got a fuel gauge, which I don't understand modern bikes that don't have fuel gauges. But it seems to be a thing. I don't know why across lots of different brands.
Do you just get a warning light when it's getting lower then, I guess?
Pretty much. But the warning light, when it comes on, it doesn't tell you what range you've got. It tells you how many miles you've ridden.
Okay, that's wrong way round, arguably.
Yep, so you kind of have to know these numbers before you go, because it will tell you you've done 10 miles and you don't know how many you've got left.
Right.
Effectively. But what's really interesting is that once you kind of learn what numbers you got, how many miles you got to the next fuel stop, you got your A and your B kind of mileages, but trip A always resets when you turn the bike off.
Okay.
So if you've got a number in your head and you're in the middle of nowhere, turn it off for the night. In the morning, you either have to write that number down, or you won't know how many miles you've done.
So you have to use...
I'm terrible at remembering this, so
you need to use trip B or
Yeah.
Or use your memory. That's, yes, it's a tad niggly. In terms of range, how far were you getting sort of on the sort of main tank and then into your sort of reserve portion?
So I was topping up around 140 miles, so you got pretty far. I'm quite impressed with that, to be honest.
Yep.
And then I think the range, it said it was about 40 miles once the light went on, 30, 40 miles. I think I pushed it to about 28 once, and that was as far as I dared to go.
Okay.
Because I was on my own and stuff, with no extra fuel. So yeah, you got plenty of miles in the tank, but yeah, that was just a little bit annoying.
Okay. And sort of away from those sort of long distance practicalities, how did you find it in its perhaps more natural habitat of maybe cruising around town or sort of going out for a ride on the lanes? Yeah, no, really lovely. Like, you're a bit worried about filtering because the engine's so bulky, but obviously the handlebars are much wider, so you don't really need to worry about it. And because it does have that little tick when you get the throttle when you're going at low speeds, you've got that little kind of like, oh, I'm going somewhere at the same time. Yeah, I just really liked it. It handles beautifully. Yeah. Can't complain about that. Again, you've got the tick in the engine when you're going around corners, so you have to like think about that if you're going around sweeping corners. But just getting through traffic and stuff, it was a breeze, to be honest. Yeah. And I think in the trim that your long-term was with all bits and pieces, paint options, because I don't think any BMW goes out at the base RRP, they're always up-spec'd a little bit. I think you said it was about £16,000, £17,000 around that region, over the £14,000 list. I mean, again, perhaps I'd sort of bring that up, but did you feel it was worth that amount of money? Because I mean, in some ways it's quite a basic bike, there's a lot of tech in there, but for that sort of money, you can also look at Africa Twins and various other sort of fairly well-kitted bikes. Did you feel it was good value for money? I think it really depends on taste when you think about that. Because one man's Africa Twin is another man's, Yeah, I know what you're getting at. So I think for somebody who perhaps likes the retro look and they want something that's going to just kind of like be everything they need to be, I understand putting the money down for it. Yeah. But equally, I had a couple of extras on mine, so you would have had to account for those before you put the asking price down. But I will say, I didn't have this paint colour. I had the
the green one, which was really nice, and it was like a British racing green, even though it's not that, but it looked like that, and I thought that was gorgeous. So I think if you wanted something that was going to be of style icon, then you'd understand parting with the money.
Sure.
If you're going to keep it for a few years, but.
And were there any either aftermarket extras or genuine accessories or upgrades that you thought were worth the money?
So I got some panniers fitted because I did stupid amount of miles all the time. I got the BMW panniers to begin with, and they came with a rack that were quite easy to fit, to be honest. And they looked small in general, but you could actually shove loads in there. Yeah. I was actually really impressed with that. And they were green as well, and they were kind of like a retro sort of style, so they matched the bike perfectly, even though you wouldn't think it really suited panniers. But it kind of just worked with the bike.
Were they waterproof?
Yes. For the most part.
For the most part.
No, so it was like a liner, you shoved your stuff in the liner and then you put them in the bag, so that weren't too bad. I did swap those out for a set from Nippy Normans. Yep. Again, they were lovely. They were like proper retro styling with like buckles and things like that, and they looked really nice as well. And the only difference with those was I'd had to move the indicators, so I can't remember which pannier this goes with, but with one of the pannier brackets, I had to move the indicators to the back. Right. I think that was with the Nippy Normans ones. Yeah. Because I'd got some new indicators and some different ones just to see what it'd be like, which were some Visor Technique ones. Yeah. Which were loads brighter than these, but these are fine anyway, so won't worry too much. But yeah, with the Nippy Normans ones, I had to move them to the back, and they hadn't left enough wire. To kind of move them back, because obviously you don't think about that at the time, do you? Apart from that, yeah, the BMW ones themselves, if you were looking to just get them straight from BMW, yeah, they fit really easy. Yeah. Right, well, thank you for your time today, giving us a bit of feedback on that. That was very thorough, and I don't think we could probably turn over many more stones in examining this. Thank you for watching. If you've liked this, drop us a like, drop a comment below, ask Saf any more questions you want to know about it, and hope to see you again on another video. Thank you.